Let's see, I'll start, I guess, this way. My grandfather worked at the mine. I had two uncles that worked at the mine. My dad worked at the mine. I worked at the mine. My brother worked at the mine. A daughter and a son. All right, my grandfather was on the job. He was a mechanic supervisor, fixing pumps and all on the mining deal when they needed fixing, laying pipe and all to the washer of the float plant, whatever. He worked out there in what they call the field as a supervisor over the crew. And at about 60 years old, he had a heart attack. Well, they let him come back and just hang around and make his retirement where he can retire. All right, my uncle come in out of high school and went to work in the float plant. In 3 years, he was sent to a sanatorium in Tampa, tuberculosis sanatorium. He spent 2 years in the sanatorium. All right, my other uncle, Uncle Elwood, he worked for American Cyanamide, and he worked out there until he was in his 40s, and he had a stroke. And so Uncle Elwood was out of business. My dad worked in the float plant 5 years, and in that 5 years, he was having headaches and bad stomach problems. And the doctor advised him to quit and get out because of the reagents and stuff. His system couldn't absorb it, and he couldn't work there any longer. All right, I went to work out there as vacation relief, and they move you through all parts of the phosphate field until you get to a position you can get full-time, and that's where you work. And I worked through mining in both mines. I worked in the acid plant, and I wound up in the dry mill department. And I worked through that until I run a railroad locomotive, and we loaded and shipped rock and loaded ships at port to send overseas. And at that time, 99.9% of it was for export. Very little was shipped inward. And the reason that they used Florida for this, they told us that because we had wintertime, we had ports they could ship that stuff out from. That no other place could they mine phosphate and ship it in the winter except Florida. So that's what Swift was doing. Swift, IMC, American Cyanamide, all when they big ship come in, all of us worked together as companies to load that ship and send it out. And they'd bring another. We each had all that we could do to load that ship and send it out. You couldn't load one by yourself. All the companies come in together and load and shipped it out. Now, in the dry mill department, that stuff come out of the float plant, went into tanks. We went in there with a locomotive backed up, loaded on wet rock cars, and carried Agricola, which is on 555, used to be, but it's mined up now. But they had a big A-frame. They dumped in a dumping pit. It went on top, and it went down that A-frame in different grades and was poured out. But that stuff was full of reagents because it just come through the float plant. It had all the reagents in the rock. It wasn't washed clean and pretty like they claimed. It was just reagents in the rock. You could smell it as far as you could see the wet rock car. He was in there like that. That's the reason I have no hair. Nobody out there had any because of the reagents in that rock. And when they brought it through the dryers and dried that stuff, there was just dust galore because had a lot of dust in that rock. And then we loaded in port dumps, cement hoppers, and we loaded. They put it in steel tanks, and they had 18-inch chutes under the bottom of the tanks, and they were numbered, and different grades of rock was in each tank. And they would have a shipment for so much, and then if they had a boat to load, they would use 4 or 5 of them tanks for that grade loading that boat. And we would just reach under there and load them out. And you could load a car with 4 chutes in about 2 minutes. You could just pull the handles, staggered out, 4 doors. Cars had 8 doors, just stagger 4 doors, load in 2 minutes, shove the handles up, put another one under. And we had 2 dryers drying. The shift behind me, there was a boy working that come out of there from the Appalachians. He was poor, he didn't have nothing. You could tell by his looks he didn't have nothing. His family moved down here for a better life. Well, they put him on the railroad loading that rock, and he was not qualified for that. He was just a poor boy needing a job, and they needed somebody to fill that position. Well, he started loading, And when they load, there was so much dust you couldn't see each other or nothing, just covered. Well, when the boy on the front loaded his 2 doors, he looked, and the back 2 doors were running over. So he went and closed his chutes off, but the boy had stepped in the hole, and phosphate had covered him up, that hot phosphate. They carried it to the dumping pit, knocked it down, and he come out the bottom. Now, I wasn't there, but the boys that worked there said that he was dead, and that rock was so hot till his arms had busted open, and, fluids was coming out of it. Now, that was phosphate. All right, I worked out there 9 years and quit. And, let's see, I can give you just about anything you want on that, but I'll give you some of this, I guess.
Don, I don't know if you got it on there, but you had some accounts of the people that you knew that got cancer.
Yeah, okay. Let's see if I can run that. Yeah. After I quit, it was 1966 I quit. And we opened up a business, a paint and body business, and a garage. I went to the Ford place in Fort Meade to pick up some body parts for a job. Was standing at the window waiting to get my turn, to have them bring the parts out. And a friend of mine was coming up through the parking lot. And I hadn't seen him since I had left, and he run a drag line in the mining department. But I knew him well because I'd worked with him. And I said, "Cecil, how you doing?" And when I said that, he started uncontrollably crying, just went all to pieces. And so it was so loud until the whole dealership went quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. I mean, all the mechanics quit, everybody quit. And this went on for about 2 or 3 minutes. And when he finally got his composure, he pulled out his handkerchief, wiped his eyes, and he said, "Don," he says, "I'm dying. I've got cancer. I don't have but 60, 90 days to live." Well, the man wasn't maybe late 30s, early 40s. And what do you say to a man like that? I mean, he was a friend, and he told me this, and it tore him up. And I told him I hated it, and I hoped the very best for him. But he got straightened out then where he could talk and visit, and the dealership went back to work. All right, then the boy I worked with, Willie, me and him started at the same time. Willie ended up working, I believe, in maintenance. Well, anyhow, in his late 30s, early 40s, Willie come with a shot one evening late when I was closing up, and he said he was going around to see his friends that cancer had eat him up, but he wanted to go around and see his friends before he passed. And he spent about an hour with me, and he left. I had a friend named Floyd that was working on the railroad in the shift. Let's see, he worked on the shift that we relieved. He worked on Jake Hendricks' shift. Floyd Rabble. Floyd was working on the locomotive, and we were all trying to get on the Atlantic coastline because you could make 3 times the money you could with Swift and Company. We were all qualified railroad people, and everybody was always trying to get on with Atlantic coastline or seaboard. Well, Floyd and another friend of mine had went to Lakeland and had talked to that man up there, and he told him, he said, "We're not hiring right now." He said, "Our busy time is the winter," but he said, "We work with Santa Fe in California, and their busy time is summer." He said, "I'll call them, and y'all go out there and go to work with them, and when their busy season's over, y'all come back to Florida, and we'll put you on with us, working here with us." And they work on something called extra board. Well, Floyd and my other friend loaded up their families and went to California to Santa Fe. Well, about a couple of years later, I was working there at the shop, and he come by, and he looked real nice. And he come by, and he said, "Don," he said, "I come by to see all of you." He said, "I've got cancer." He said, "I can't sell everything I got and move my family back. I won't live long enough. But me and Barbara decided we'd just come home now and visit everybody. Then we'd go back." And said, "Then they'll cremate me and send me back. And then we can sell Barbara's stuff, and she can come back to Bartow. She was born and raised in Bartow. She can come home." And so that's the last time I saw Floyd, and he left. But that just gives you 3 of the guys that I worked with, and all of them were under well, I guess Floyd might have been maybe late 20s, early 30s, because his kids are real small. And that was 1968 probably. And I was born in 38, so you know how old I was. And Floyd was younger than me, so he had to be possibly 2 or 3 years younger than me. So you see where he was at in that age. And Willie was the same way. He was younger than me. And it was all this happened around about 4 or 5 years in this area. So that gives you how young he was when this thing got on. And then when I went to work out there, I had a supervisor, and I can't remember his name because he only worked maybe 6 months. I mean, he wasn't my actual supervisor. He was superintendent over dry mill and acid plant. But he was a good man, young man. And the man I worked with out there named Cecil Wiggins told me, he said, you know, he's sick and he's in the hospital. And I said, what's wrong with him, Cecil? He said he's got bone cancer. Well, I knew when he was working, he'd get out of that Swift car and he'd get out. He'd always have to help himself get out. And he'd have to stand and rub his knees and his joints before he could go into the dry mill and talk to the foreman. And I wondered why a man that young was fighting something like that. Well, I guess bone cancer ate him up. Cecil said he went in to see him, and he said he was in extreme pain, and he was laying there with tears running out his eyes. He said, I went to see him, and he didn't make it. And then here's people that, I work with out there that, like Q.P. Williams, he was my supervisor at the dry mill when I was running the locomotive. And after I quit and opened up the shop, he come by one night, him and his wife, and told me that he was cancer eat him up. He was dying. He was making the rounds. And then Bonnie's friend Betsy Kemp, her husband worked for Cargill, was it, in the laboratory? Cancer eat him up. He's dead. But you know, these things are something that Phosphate don't talk about. But these people that I mentioned are people that I know. Now, other people that works out there, they know people that they know probably that done this. Well, you know, I know you can't stop phosphate because it goes all the way to the White House. And you can't stop it. But bless God, you can do some changes in it. I mean, you know, it ain't right. It ain't right for a man to be born and not live a full life. Because God gives you 70, and that's 70 years. And I made my 70. I'm living on mercy, but them boys never had a chance to make their 70. And all this needs to be brought to the light. And another thing that bothers me deeply is on our Board of County Commissioners, we're supposed to have one of them commissioners that represents the people on phosphate. All right. I understand. I don't know it to be true. I knew Minor Brown used to be this position. But I understand Miss Bird holds that position now. All right, what's her qualifications on phosphate? I believe Dennis said that she said that Lex Albritton told her. Well, I haven't seen him pack a lunchbox and go out there and work phosphate. So I don't think that makes him qualified to represent the people on phosphate, or her to be representing the people on phosphate when she does not have an iota of what's going on, or what's went on. And I don't think you can tell her, because I was there when they put a gag order on the people, so you can't tell them nothing, they ain't gonna listen to nothing. So what do? We're blocked up in the corner by people that I feel like is living on the dark side, pushing us in the corner because they have the power and the will to do so. These chip dikes. Now, you can see for yourself or think what you want, but they had one. Armour had an old big chip dike out of Bartow, the old Armour plant. Bonnie Mine up there, IMC, had a big one there, that big acid plant. Farmland had one. Swift and Company had one. U.S. Steel and Freeport has one. And all that lines up with our area, all that. And then Alcoa Aluminum had a plant right there at U.S. Steel and Freeport where they made aluminum out of some of that mess. And my daughter worked there for them. And now she's got COPD to the extent that she has to crush up pills and suck it down her throat to keep breathing. while the rest of us are using inhalers full of steroids so we can breathe. And this might be to somebody's interest to figure out something on this. And I believe in my heart, really, that it's contaminated water that's flowing into Hardy County because my neighbor here, Cliff Jones, died with cancer. Jared Rebels, his wife, I didn't know her name, but I heard she had a form of cancer that killed her. Carol Parker lived right up here, Jimmy Parker's wife. I heard she had cancer. John Keene, that lived right there by Jared Rebels, he died with cancer. Byron Allison lived in Fort Greene, and I've known him since he was a child. He died with cancer. Betty Chester's Waters lived just above them, and I heard that she died with cancer. Hollis Ledford lived there by my dad. My dad died with cancer, and Hollis Ledford died with cancer. Hollis couldn't be more than in his 30s, maybe, I believe probably his late 30s, and he died with cancer. I understand now Roy Jacobs has got it. He's fighting for his life, and he lives right there by where my dad and Hollis live, right there close.
So these people that you're saying are all in this same area,
Yeah.
within a few miles?
Well, Hollis and Roy and my dad was within a half a mile of each other.
Okay.
You follow me? Don't that make sense? And then James Prine, he works for Mosaic, and I understand, I don't know it to be true, but I understand he has it. Lavoy Hall lives in Center Hill out there, and he's been fighting it, and his is in remission now. Now, this is something that somebody should get concerned about when people you know this is happening to. And here's something else I'd like to add, and I don't know, I can't, but about 2 miles above me, there's a lady that this well driller told me that they couldn't get her a decent well, that they had to furnish her water the rest of her life. Now, if this is a truth matter, I didn't talk to the lady, I don't know, but this is what I was told by somebody that's I've never caught them telling a lie. And us, it's just from them. Now, our wells are destroyed.
What's your well? What's the problem with yours, Don?
They said it was rust, but
did you ever have that problem before they started mining around here?
We've always had Culligan. I can't wash my car hardly now. It don't turn completely brown like snuff, don't it?
Mm-hmm.
I have to buy stuff to take it off. I didn't have nothing like that before they
dishes are
moved
like
in
that.
and mine. Their dishes are that way. But yet they claim it's just a little rust. Well, my gosh, when your dishes look like you took them out of a septic tank after it goes through Culligan, I mean, what's going on, you know? My spigots on the outside I don't have on Culligan, but when you wash your car half a dozen times, the white one, it turns tan. I mean, just maybe twice or 3 times it turns tan, and it ain't white no longer.
Can we see one of your dishes come out of your
Yeah.
dishwasher,
Yeah.
Bonnie? And we'll.
So you see, something needs to be addressed in it. When your people that you have elected to represent you are sitting up there behind bulletproof glass, I understand, and you got to go through a metal detector and take a fingernail file away from you, and then you have to live in this manner, and they represent you, something's wrong. And I don't know, but I just feel like something can be done if somebody will get their head straight. Now, I understand that we have state government that regulates county. Where in the world are they at?
And you can't get. Let me see if I can pull back here a little bit or forward. Show me the inside on that. You can get another look. And no, you can't get those marks off, can you?
You'd have to get that.
Acid remover.
It's some stuff that you can get from Culligan, and you have to soak it in them. Same way, I got a new dishwasher, but before that, it was pure. The whole walls were this color. And I'd have to just ever so often put that rust stuff or whatever that would take it out of it.
Looks like we're looking at the moon here.
Mm-hmm.
And
But does everybody in Hardy County want to have to deal with it?
thanks, Bonnie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, eventually, if the mines get close to us, we will.
You will deal with it.
We need some kind of compromise where we don't have, we need a buffer.
Yeah.
I would think.
All right, now here's something that was promised. They promised us before they would mine at these meetings that Frank and I went to, that they would build dikes and plant trees on them and all that stuff, so we would not have the sand or the smoke, or we would just be immune from all that. Well, where was that at when I was coming home one day and turned on the Caroline Road and this whole world was black over here? And when I got here, there was so much dirt and air, it all couldn't fall to the ground, and it was on top of my truck, cars, housetop, porch, solid dirt, just in the air, solid. You could just breathe it in your nose. And from the tree burn and smoke coming through the house windows, you had to smell it. And where was anybody at when I sat in my living room in the middle of the night and they're mining deep and the foundation of my house shaking? Where was our representative there? And where was he at when they were busting up that rock with them water cannons and you had to put a small air conditioner in your bedroom window to drown out the noise where you could sleep at night? And where are they at in the summertime when the hordes of mosquitoes are so thick you breathe them up your nose and you can't hardly get in your car at night and you can't hardly get in the house without it filling up? Why, as Americans, we have to deal with this because somebody wants to make $1 trillion? This don't seem right to me. Somebody's dropped the ball. Somebody ain't doing their job. Now, mining's been going on 100 years. They claim that they got this thing whipped. Well, if they've got it whipped, how come everybody's getting COPD and cancer and stuff? If they've got it whipped. And if they got it whipped, how come they can't clean that reagent out of the sand and the rock? And how come in the beginning when I worked at the mine, anybody could go on mine property? You could go up to the mine anytime. But now they got it fenced with guards like it's some kind of prison and you can't get on that property. Looks to me like somebody's hiding something when it's got this extent. And they can claim anything they want to claim. But this thing don't add up. And when I was a kid and you could go in fishing on mine property and you caught a fish and it tastes like kerosene, you know something's wrong. And what are they doing with theirs? Are they keeping it all piped up or you can't taste their kerosene fish? What's going on? I believe we got a right to know as Americans we do have a constitution, even if it's not recognized in Hardy County.